You know that feeling where no matter how much you get done in ministry, you always still feel behind? You send the email, and then you realize there was a parent that you forgot to text. You finish planning youth group, and then you remember that there was a volunteer that you never followed up with. You get through Sunday morning, and then Monday morning hits, and somehow there are still 12 things waiting for you. A meeting to prep for, a room to clean, a parent who needs clarification, a volunteer who still hasn't responded, a student that you meant to check in on, a ministry idea that you actually care about, but that you also keep pushing aside because of other things that you need to get done. And at some point, you start wondering, am I bad at this? Am I just disorganized? Do I need to set clear boundaries? Do I need to get up earlier? Do I need a better planner? Maybe, but I think there's a deeper issue underneath it all. Over the last several weeks, I've been having conversations and interviews with church workers, specifically those that we would consider second chair ministry leaders, those that are responsible and in charge of different aspects of a ministry, but not the head leader of a congregation. I talk to people like youth ministry directors and children's ministry coordinators. The goal of these conversations was to find out what are the unique challenges and frustrations in ministry that these kinds of church workers face. And one of the clearest patterns that I kept hearing was this. A lot of church workers aren't behind because they don't care. They are behind because they care deeply. And ministry has slowly turned every good thing into their thing. That is what I want to talk about in this video. Because if you are constantly feeling like you are always behind, maybe the answer isn't to try harder. It may be to get clear on what is actually yours to carry, what you have absorbed because nobody else owned it, and what you are assuming because you are afraid of what might happen if you stop. Most church workers that I know have some version of the same weekly experience. You have the things that are on your job description, and then you have the things that everyone assumes is on your job description. And then there are things that are not on your job description, but somebody needs to do them. And then you have the things that were supposed to be handled by a volunteer, but then the volunteer forgot about it. And then there are the things that your pastor needs help with. And then, of course, there are the things that parents expect. And then all of the things that the board, the elders, the staff, and the school care about. And then you have your own standards. And those are usually higher than everyone else's. So even when you are getting things done, it still doesn't feel like you're caught up. Because ministry isn't just one kind of work. It's teaching, it's planning, it's communication, it's volunteer care, emotional support, pastoral sensitivity, it's event logistics, it's staff dynamics, it's spiritual leadership, and it's administration. It's being present and showing up at games and concerts, at coffee meetings, in hospital rooms, at confirmation nights, Sunday school rooms, and youth events, and that random hallway conversation that turns into something much deeper than you were expecting. The hard part is that most of those things matter. That's why this is so difficult. If half of your job was obviously pointless, it would make this a lot easier. You could just stop doing it. But that's not usually how ministry works. The email matters. The event matters. The volunteer matters. The conversation matters. The kid, the parent, the family, they all matter. The church tradition might even matter. But when everything matters and there's no clear filter for what matters most, you end up treating everything like it belongs on your shoulders. And that's where church workers get buried. It's not because they're lazy or weak or irresponsible. And it's not because they don't care. It's because ministry has a way of turning every good thing into your thing. So here's the reframe. Feeling behind is not always a time management problem. Sometimes it's a clarity problem. Sometimes it's an ownership problem. Sometimes it's a support problem. Sometimes it's a structure problem. Because you can be managing your time perfectly and still be carrying too much. You can have a great planner and still be unclear as to what is yours. You can block your calendar and still spend your whole week reacting to other people's urgency. You can be disciplined and still feel like ministry is running your life instead of you leading it with intention. This is why another productivity tip won't fix this. Because the deeper question isn't, how do I get more done? The deeper question is, what am I carrying that wasn't mine to carry in the first place? That can be uncomfortable to ask, because you probably carry a lot. You are capable. You are responsible. You notice things. You care about details. You care about people. And you can see the gap before other people can see it. And because you carry it, other people assume you should too. But just because you can carry something doesn't mean that it belongs to you. There's a story in Exodus 18 that I think ties into this in a lot of deep ways. Moses is leading the people of Israel, and every day people come to him with questions and conflicts, needs and decisions. He sits before the people from morning until evening. From the outside, this might look like faithful leadership. He's available, he's helping, he's serving, he's giving wisdom. He's doing work that matters. But then Jethro, his father-in-law, comes, sees this, and says, "What you are doing is not good." That line should make us pause. Because Moses was not doing something selfish. He was not ignoring his people. He wasn't being lazy. He was doing holy and necessary work. And still, Jethro says, this is not good. Why? Because the way that Moses was carrying this work was going to wear him out and wear out the people around him. Jethro says, this thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to do it alone. And some of you might need to hear that. Not as a shame, but a mercy. This thing might be too heavy for you. You are not able to carry it alone. That does not mean that you are failing. That might mean that the structure is wrong. It might mean that the responsibility is unclear. It might mean that the work needs to be shared. It might mean that you've become the person that everybody else goes to, not because it's healthy, but because it's the system that they've learned to do. And notice this, Jethro does not tell Moses to care less. He tells Moses to structure this care differently. That is a massive difference. The invitation isn't stop caring. The invitation is care differently. Because one of the most freeing things in this passage for us is that Moses was doing holy work, and it was still not good for him to carry it alone. So maybe the question isn't, how can I get strong enough to carry this? Maybe the better question is, was I ever supposed to carry all of this in the first place? I want to give you a simple way to think about this. When ministry feels heavy, when you feel constantly behind, you are usually carrying 3 different kinds of weight. Assigned weight, absorbed weight, and assumed weight. Assigned weight is the work that is actually yours. That is the work that's connected to your role, your job description, your strengths, your passions, your call. Now, assigned weight isn't always fun. Sometimes it's the email that you don't want to send. Sometimes it's that hard conversation you need to have. Sometimes it's a spreadsheet. Sometimes it's the boring logistical thing that needs to happen to make your meaningful ministry possible. If I do not enjoy it, it must not be mine. That is not maturity. Some things are yours, even when they're hard, but assigned weight still needs to be carried wisely. Parent communication might be a part of your role, but that doesn't mean that it should consume every hour of your week. Volunteer care might be a part of your role, But that doesn't mean that every volunteer failure is your own personal failure. Planning youth group might be a part of your role. But that does not mean that you need to own every single activity, snack, game, setup, and cleanup, every little detail. The question for assigned weight is, how can I carry this responsibly and faithfully without letting it consume me? That's the first category, but it's not usually the one that buries us the most. The second category is absorbed weight. Absorbed weight is the work that became yours because there was a gap. Nobody clearly assigned it, and nobody clearly owns it. But because you are capable and reliable, and because you care, you picked it up. This is where church workers get buried. Absorbed weight is the leaderless event that you now manage. The ministry that landed on you because somebody else stepped down. The group that you lead because technically you fit the demographic. The Sunday morning expectation that nobody explained, but somehow still expects you to understand. That staff vacancy that creates a gap. So everyone picks up a little more, except your little more becomes a lot more. The communication system that nobody designed, so you have to keep patching it together. A thing that your pastor or another staff member or a volunteer used to handle, but it's now yours because someone had to handle it to keep it from falling apart. And absorbed weight usually starts from a place of love. You're trying to help. You're trying to serve. You're trying to make things easier for your pastor. You're trying to protect the ministry from chaos. You're trying to keep something important from dying. You're trying to be faithful. But over time, the organization is learning something. If nobody else owns it, you will. And that is where your helpfulness can become a trap. Because you are no longer just doing ministry. You are compensating for a lack of clarity in the system. And if you carry absorbed weight for long enough, people will start to forget that it was a gap. They'll just start calling it your job. And that is why so many church workers that I know eventually say some version of, I just want to do my actual ministry. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're above small, menial tasks, but because they can feel their best energy being spent on things that were never clearly entrusted to them. And eventually, the work that they were actually called to do gets squeezed out after they finish carrying everything else. The question for absorbed weight is this: did I intentionally accept this responsibility, or did I inherit it because no one else was holding it? That question alone can create a lot of clarity. The third category is assumed weight. This is often the heaviest one, because the heaviest weight isn't usually the thing that's on your calendar. It's the story that you're telling yourself about what happens if you stop. Assumed weight is the weight you carry because of fear, guilt, pressure, perfectionism, or unclear expectations. Nobody may have explicitly asked you to carry it, but you carry it anyway. Assumed weight sounds like, if I don't carry this, it will fall apart. If I do not show up, people will think that I don't care. If I don't answer quickly, someone will get frustrated. If this event does not go well, people will blame me. If the ministry is not growing, I must be failing. If I rest, people will think that I'm not working hard enough. If I do not fill this gap, my pastor will get more stressed. If I do not keep everyone happy, I am not leading well. And this is where ministry can become spiritually dangerous, because assumed weight often disguises itself as faithfulness, as responsibility. It sounds noble. It sounds like love. But sometimes what we call responsibility is just anxiety wearing a name tag. There is a difference between faithfulness and over-functioning. Faithfulness says, God has entrusted this to me. I will steward it well. Over-functioning says, if I do not hold this together, everything depends on me. One is grounded in calling. The other is driven by fear. And they can look very similar from the outside. Both may show up early. Both may answer emails. Both may plan events. Both may care deeply. Both may work hard. But internally, they are completely different. Faithfulness can rest because God is still God. Overfunctioning cannot rest because it feels like letting go of control. And if you work in ministry, you have to learn the difference. Because if you cannot tell the difference between what you care about and what you own, you will eventually carry everything that matters to you. And in ministry, everything matters. So here is a line that I don't want you to forget. The goal is not to stop caring. You can care deeply about families without having to own every family's faith life. You can care deeply about students without having to own every student's spiritual maturity. You can care deeply about your church without owning its broken systems. You can care deeply about your pastor without making his stress your responsibility. You can care deeply about people's opinions without making those opinions a part of your job description. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, I planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the growth. This is such an important sentence for ministry leaders. You can plant, you can water, you can love, you can lead, you can prepare, you can invite, you can follow up, but you cannot make the growth happen. That belongs to God. You are responsible for the faithful stewardship of what has actually been entrusted to you. You are not responsible for producing every outcome. You are not responsible for being the Holy Spirit. That is not giving up. That is learning to lead like a human instead of like a savior. So with all that said, here is where I want you to start. Don't try to fix your entire ministry in 1 week. Don't overhaul your calendar. Don't confront every person. Don't cancel 3 programs. Don't recruit 12 new volunteers before Friday. Start smaller. Start by naming the weight. Take 20 minutes and write out everything that feels heavy in ministry right now. Not just the tasks, everything. The event you're dreading, that hard conversation that you're avoiding, the ministry that you feel guilty about, that person that you're trying not to disappoint, the expectation that you can't shake, the thing that you kept saying, I can manage it, even if you know deep down inside that it's not healthy. Then sort each item into one of the 3 categories: assigned, absorbed, assumed. Again, assigned means the things that are actually yours to carry, yours to steward. Absorbed means the things that are yours because there was a gap. And assumed means you're carrying it because of fear, guilt, pressure, or unclear expectations. And after you sort through all of those tasks, ask yourself this one question. What does this weight need? Does it need to be carried more wisely, clarified, shared, delegated, released, brought to prayer? That is the beginning of healthier leadership. Not fixing everything, naming what is true, because vague weight is a lot heavier than unnamed weight. And to help you do that, I made a free tool called the Ministry Weight Assessment. It walks you through this exact process. You will be able to name what you're carrying, and then you will sort it into assigned, absorbed, or assumed weight. And from there, identify what needs to be clarified, shared, delegated, or released. You can download that for free with the link below. And if you work through that assessment and realize, I really could use some more help sorting out and finding clarity in my ministry context, I'm also opening a small beta coaching group called the Sustainable Ministry Reset. That link is below too, but start with the assessment. Start by naming the weight. Start by asking what is actually yours. Because the truth is, if you feel behind, no matter how much work you do, the answer probably isn't to get more done. It might be to answer this question. What am I carrying that was never clearly mine? Because once you answer that, you can start to lead with more clarity.